Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about, just continue to talk about the transformative power of Dungeons & Dragons and the truth it can teach us, which is just really awe-inspiring and hopeful, right? So Dungeons & Dragons has been around for since 1974. In 1983, a horrible zealot group came to destroy it and finish it forever. It was the 1983 Evangelical Christians in America. In 2023, another group came to destroy Dungeons & Dragons, and that was the OSR Zealots and the OSR allies who wanted to destroy Dungeons & Dragons and replace it with a topple copy, a copy made from a company that was willing to make profit off their hatred, right? So the OSR allies came for Dungeons & Dragons in 2023, and they shouted literally the same words that the Evangelical Christian Zealots shouted in 1983. And the banner cry in both 1983 to destroy Dungeons & Dragons forever, and the banner cry in 2023 to destroy Dungeons & Dragons forever and make sure that you could never own, read, play, or watch it, right, was D&D be gone. And it was terrifying, and it was horrifying, and it was unfair. And it was frightening. It was actually terrifying. I was very, and it massively impacted this drive of the OSR allies to destroy Dungeons & Dragons forever. Really harmed the mental state of many people. Actually, Ginny Z talked about how mentally taxing it was. No Nat 1 talked about it openly. The Dungeon Dudes guys talked about it. Professor Dungeon Master talked about it. It was an open conversation that it was affecting the mental health of many Dungeons & Dragons creators, many Dungeons & Dragons copiers, many Dungeons & Dragons champions, many Dungeons & Dragons adjacent people, right? And so basically there was this horrifying essentially 5 months where everybody was like, okay, so Cobble Press is gonna prophetize the hatred against Dungeons & Dragons, and then Dungeons & Dragons will disappear forever. Well, here's what we learned. Love beats hate. And everybody who loves Dungeons & Dragons, you just defeated the people who hate Dungeons & Dragons. And the reason why is Kelsey Dion, very progressive, inspired by love of Dungeons & Dragons, by love of OSR, by love of progressiveness, right? And everyone else who kept buying Dungeons & Dragons and saying, I refuse to let this be destroyed. I fought against, people were like, no, man, I either fought against or I read about the Satanic Panic, and I'm not going to let you do the same thing in 2023 that they tried to do in 1983. And the people who love Dungeons & Dragons just defeated those who hate Dungeons & Dragons. And by watching Dungeons & Dragons history, we learn love beats hate, right? The Tales of the Valiant product was a product marinated, born in, created in, driven by hatred, the hatred of Dungeons & Dragons, and it utterly failed. It had a $1.1 million Kickstarter, which is an embarrassment because Kelsey Dion's Arcane Library, a much smaller company with a much less known creator than many of the people working for Cobble Press, utterly embarrassed them with a $1.3 million Kickstarter for ShadowDark. The utter embarrassment of the Tales of the Valiant by the ShadowDark proves love beats hate, in my humble opinion. Every single word of that's my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.